All right, guys, we are here back at it again. Same trio, a little bit of a different setup. This does not look like what I'm used to recording in, but we're going to make it work. I decided to travel across the state and steal a seat on my buddy Chris's couch. Brian, how's it up in North Georgia? We cannot relate.
Actually, it's really good. The weather's nice. Played a little bit of golf and super fun. Uh, I do have some thank yous to give out real quick. Um, First of all, I'd like to thank everybody that tuned in and checked out our prediction video. It did really well. I was super pleased about that. So thanks to all the viewers. Hopefully there'll be subscribers here shortly. Um, I do want to give a nice shout out to George, my buddy, called me out on the bad pick on the Seahawks. So and Najee Harris going there, and I agreed with him. It was a bad pick. I do like him going to the Cowboys. I do know that he cleared up some cap space, so that still would be a good pick. The other one that I kind of thought about was uh, Carolina. I know they have Hubbard, but they need a secondary because their first round pick or second round pick, I can't remember. He kind of flopped and blew out his knee again. So that wouldn't be a bad place for him to go too. But we'll save that for a different time. But I do want to give George a shout out. Thanks for commenting and trying to open up that dialogue with us. So appreciate that. Other than that, it's been a pretty good week, very productive. And what about you, Chris? What you got going on?
Oh, not much, not much. Just waiting on Brad here to show up here in South Georgia. And to echo something you said, we will, by the way, take ownership of our picks, whether they were bad or good. If they were bad, we're gonna throw that out on social media and just say wrong or whatever. And if we're right, then you're not gonna hear the end of it because we're not too humble. So
Yeah, and a lot of times too, I mean, we try to make it obvious the day that we're recording these podcasts, just so you guys can understand. And so we have a little bit of a plausible deniability that when we're making these calls, a lot of times it's with the information that we have at hand. And I know we'll get into it here in just a little bit, but one of my picks has already been proven wrong just by the NFL through no fault of my own. But it happens, and currently we're approaching 200 views on that free agency video. It is our biggest hit to date, and we couldn't do it without you guys, so we appreciate that. Hopefully, somebody watching this right now is a fan that has found the channel through that free agency video and has decided to stick around. So that's pretty exciting. But what do you say we just jump right into it? We've got a big UFC event tonight. I know a couple of our subscribers have mentioned that we haven't really reached the world of MMA yet, so we're going to change that. UFC 313 happens tonight at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Got a couple of big fights. Light heavyweight championship is going to be on the line. Kind of a fan favorite, Alex Pereira. He is 12-2. He is defending his title for the fourth time. This is going to be Magomed Ankalaev, who has only lost one fight since March of 2018 was his last loss. So he's been on quite the run. He has had a couple of just bad things happen to him, I guess, over the last few years. But this is a pretty exciting fight. Uh, a lot of people have been wanting to see Alex defend the belt against Magomed. He's been an up and comer for a while. He's been in there with a lot of veterans within the UFC light heavyweight division. He's proven himself. The record speaks for that. And just in talking about Alex Pereira's title reign so far, something I thought was really interesting. You talk about these UFC fighters and they try to build resumes and stuff like that. Pereira actually has a record for shortest time between three consecutive title defenses in UFC history in only 175 days. Now, Brian and I mean, I don't know how much Chris paid attention to UFC back in the day, but Brian and I really came up through the popularity spike of the UFC, the Chuck Liddells and Tito Ortiz and stuff like that. Well, back in that day, you only had a UFC pay-per-view maybe every 6 weeks, and your favorite fighter fought maybe once a year, sometimes twice a year. The fact that this guy's coming in and defending his title three times in 175 days is just crazy to me. Not anything that we've ever seen before or used to seeing. Brian, what do you kind of know about this fight, and will you be watching?
I don't know a lot about it. I've kind of fallen out of love with the UFC a little bit. Uh, like you said, back in the day, the Chuck Liddells, the Ortiz, I I guess it kind of fell into like wrestling. Those were big characters, big names, big personalities, and it wasn't just about the fight. I guess a lot of it was the promos leading up to it. I haven't seen a lot of promos. I don't know if uh, UFC has kind of changed it a little bit, kind of it's getting more into a boxing where it's a lot more technical fighting styles versus, let's just get in there and punch it out. Again, I said it about NASCAR. It's almost like they took the redneck out of it. I'm a big redneck sports fan. You know, let's get in there and just punch it out and throw in a few kicks to the face, Superman punches, all that kind of fun stuff, and not just let's see two guys, roll around on the ground for a little while.
Well, I think the biggest thing that you've seen is the evolution of the sport. When you talk about mixed martial arts, when UFC first kind of rose to prominence, a lot of times it was the battle of different martial art styles. You would see, oh, this guy's a multitude, black belt in karate, and he's going against a Olympic wrestler. Who's going to win in this clash of styles? Like, well, no, it's mixed martial arts. Everybody that's out there has to be a black belt in something and maybe a black belt in something else. And you've got to have a striking coach. You've got to have the at least base level knowledge of all these different things so that you can not only employ those skills, but also defend against them as well. Everybody is just, obviously you're going to have people with strong suits. You're going to have an advantage over somebody in one field or another, but everybody has to be so well-rounded because being a one-trick pony is not going to get you very far in today's UFC. Chris, are you kind of ever been into the UFC or had a favorite fighter or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, none of those names that you mentioned in the past are like foreign to me. Well, I guess some of them are foreign, but none of them are like unknown names to me. I've heard all these names. Didn't watch as much as you guys. I went over to some people's houses, got to watch the fights. Hadn't heard anything about this one coming up, but I'm happy to do my research after the fact and talk about it next week with you guys.
I didn't think about it, but Chris and I actually do have a UFC related memory together.
Yeah.
He actually was with me when my heart got broken by Cain Velasquez ending Brock Lesnar's title reign as heavyweight champion several years back. I think I said that I was going to drive into oncoming traffic
You did.
on the way home, and which was not good news that the two guys that were riding with me were wanting to hear at that time. But obviously, I did not do that. I'm still here.
Obviously.
So
We're kind of happy you didn't do that, and would not suggest that for anybody. Yeah, I'd miss the old style fighting, and I don't want to say anything bad about the new style. I do appreciate the amount of training that these guys put in, the skill level that it gets to get to that point. 100% don't want to pick a fight with any of them. Just not my thing. Maybe back in the day, but yeah, not these days. No, I was pretty dumb back in the day, so
Okay.
I wasn't the smartest cookie. So, but yeah, props to these guys. I kind of lost interest in it a little bit. Um, you know, and again, I don't see these uh highly promoted as much as you used to, I guess. Um, you know, I, back early 2000s, I guess they had like the different TV shows, and they may be on still today. I don't watch a lot of TV, usually on a computer somewhere. Um, so I don't know. It just I kind of fell out of love with it a little bit. So I don't know. Maybe this podcast will bring me back into it.
I think the biggest complaint that a lot of people have, if you're not really plugged into the sport, is it seems like it's really watered down because, like you said, looking at the card, you might have heard of one or two guys on it, but you don't know anything else. Back 15, 20 years ago, you'd see a UFC card and you're like, man, even the prelims look like they'd be headliner fights on a lot of companies' cards. And now they have so many fighters, so many divisions, so many championships, and guys that just come from all over the world that it's really hard to keep up with. what 10 or 11 different divisions that they have in the company. When Brian and I got in the sport, it was 5. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, they've added weight classes, they've added women's fighting, they've got a BMF championship that's not even really recognized. And it's kind of like the $1 million championship in wrestling. It's there, but does it really mean anything? Not necessarily. It's just something cool for those guys to fight over and fight about and stuff. But it's kind of one of those where they have so many cards now that you don't get the same level of promotion because they're not going to promote this big event until they get done with the next event. So they're always, I mean, there's not very many weeks that go by that the UFC isn't putting on a fight night. A lot of times they're free on TV. They're not necessarily pay-per-views. Of course, they've still got those as well, like what's going on tonight. Co-main events, the other fight that I wanted to talk about. This is actually one that had to go through a little bit of a change. The original fight was going to be Justin Gaethje versus Dan Hooker, and it was going to be a 5-round fight. Hooker unfortunately had to pull out due to a hand injury. He was replaced by Rafael Fiziev, who is 12-3, pretty good resume. He's actually not fought since September of 2023. He had back-to-back losses. One of them was the fight against Gaethje, and then after that he had a knee injury that caused the fight to end. So this is kind of his return fight, not only trying to come back from the knee injury, but also kind of avenge that loss to Gaethje. Gaethje is 25-5 right now. He won in a majority decision at UFC 286. That was fight of the night between these two guys. So obviously we're looking to see similar fireworks and a high quality fight for those. They might run it back and try to get a second fight of the night award between them. Gaethje is also coming off of a loss, though. His last fight was a KO loss to Max Holloway, where he actually lost the BMF title that I talked about then. But these two guys, kind of what Brian was talking about, they're not afraid to fight. This is going to be a 3-round fight. I think a lot of people probably would have liked to have seen them go 5-round, but the way they go at it, I mean, it's possible this one doesn't even go the full 3 rounds. It went last time, but both of these guys are killers, and they could end it early. So I'm expecting these two last fights, especially. A lot of times the undercard fights, even if you don't know the guys, they can surprise you with their performance and make themselves more of a notable name. But co-main and main event for this fight, I mean, they're selling all the tickets just from these 2 fights alone, and then the rest of them are just bonuses as far as I'm concerned. I'm hoping to be able to watch this tonight, though, and certainly by the time you guys are watching it, we'll know the results. Maybe we can even get something popped up on the screen. But I'll be looking forward to seeing kind of how they play out. I think Alex is having a great title run. We're looking forward to that. That's all I really had for UFC, and hopefully next time we can give you guys a little bit more of a notice when we're talking about big events and such like that. Yeah. I think we're moving on to world of football next. Is that right, Brian? We've got plenty to talk about in there.
Shocker.
Yeah, there's some big news in NFL. Not a whole lot in NCAA, but we'll talk about NFL first if you guys want to.
Yeah.
We'll talk with let's start off with Chris's pick from our other video, the Kirk Cousins. Do you read up about that or not really?
Yeah, I did, but it kind of. So I saw one outlet reporting that he may be staying. At that time that I saw that, I did some more research, and not a lot of other outlets were saying it. So I took it with a grain of salt. It's been about 12 hours since I looked into it, so maybe it's gained a lot more credibility. But if he does decide he wants to stay, or if the Falcons decide that they want him to stay, it's an expensive backup, isn't it? And maybe they just fully don't trust Penix yet, and they want a proven veteran there, even if that veteran threw, correct me if I'm wrong here, Brad, 17 interceptions. Even if he throws that many interceptions, he does have the game experience, and you can rely on that. I just don't know if it's worth what his guaranteed payout is that you're about to have to pay him. That's a rough situation for everybody involved, and maybe just other teams haven't come calling.
Well, and this is kind of the risk that Chris took when we would go into the free agency video by picking Kirk Cousins.
Yeah,
it's kind of a reminder that Kirk Cousins actually isn't a free agent. I mean, he just signed a 4-year deal with Atlanta last year. He's only 1 year into that. I mean, technically speaking, he could be in Atlanta for another 3 years. I don't think any of us expect that to happen. But kind of what I got from the story is that Kirk Cousins had requested a meeting with Arthur Blank. That meeting was granted. They sat down. Kirk Cousins made his desire known that he wanted to be cut so that he could go to a new team or traded to a new team where he had the opportunity to start, because everybody knows that Penix, at least right now, is the starter for Atlanta. And essentially, he was kind of shut down a little bit. They basically told him that they're not going to worry about what's best for Kirk Cousins and what he wants to do, that they are going to do what's best for the team, which was the same line of thinking that made Kirk Cousins upset with the Atlanta brass to begin with, because they were doing what was best for the team, they thought, when they drafted Michael Penix with the 8th overall pick last year. And a lot of this comes down to, we don't want to be one player away from an imploding team, where if Kirk Cousins got hurt last year or underperformed like we saw, then they had Penix that could step in. Well, now it's just kind of like the roles are reversed. Penix is the starter, but what happens if something happens to Penix? What if he gets injured or struggles? Do we need a Kirk Cousins around to right the ship and be able to come in, because we know that he can perform, better than a lot of other, potential backups? And just to confirm what Chris was saying a minute ago, yes, Kirk Cousins would be the most expensive backup in the NFL, but it sounds like Arthur Blank is willing to at least make that happen, or maybe that's just what he's telling Kirk Cousins. So, Brian, my question to you would be, do you really think that Kirk Cousins stays in Atlanta next year, or do you think that maybe this was a message sent out to the other teams who would be interested in Kirk Cousins, that maybe this is a little bit of a leveraging move by Atlanta to say, hey, we're perfectly fine keeping him. We are not cutting him and letting him go where he wants. If you want him, you're going to have to come and trade for him off of our roster.
That's a good point.
And that's kind of what I was thinking is, is it a ploy from Arthur Blank, to release it? It was released to NFL.com. So, I think the story is pretty legit. But is it a ploy to maybe up his value, so to speak, and pick up uh, a pretty decent edge rusher or something like that if they're not going to pull it out of the draft? Uh, it's super hard to say what they're doing without being in that meeting. And I would hate to put words in anybody's mouth to say one way or the other. I I don't think they keep him, honestly. I think it's a ploy. Um, but I think you're right. You know, do we keep Kirk Cousins around in case something happens with Penix? He falters, and I think he would have to falter pretty big for them to jerk him away from the field. But do they? I don't know. It's hard to say. Kirk Cousins is a interesting situation. It's a ton of money for a backup. I think it's a ploy because it is a ton of money. But we'll see in the next few weeks. The one that really shocked me, kind of messed my first pickup, and I'll call myself out on it. Um, the Seahawks trading Geno down to the Raiders. That was kind of I don't know, I guess a shock a little bit, and maybe it shouldn't be because, Geno still has a bunch of good years. He's a good quarterback. I had him on my fantasy team last year. I think it might be a good move for Geno and for the Raiders. So kind of interesting to see how that plays out. Maybe they pick up a decent running back. Um, you know, Maybe they pick up a running back out of free agency. There's a few of them out there. So, what do y'all think about the Geno trade?
Uh, I actually think that Geno may just be a small part of a bigger plan. Um, I forget his exact age. I think he's 37. That's pretty old. Aaron Rodgers might have something to say about that, but I think there's a little bit of a talent gap there. I think that Vegas has the management team there is putting together a lot of pieces. This one is kind of the only one that I'm kind of like, didn't see that coming. A little questionable, but their other moves tell me that they might know what they're doing. And I wouldn't rule them out getting another quarterback and Geno just being part of a bigger plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this recently, and I don't remember my exact quote, but something along the lines of Pete Carroll's hire was not indicative of Las Vegas intentions to have a prolonged rebuild. They are wanting to compete sooner rather than later. And my free agency prediction was that Sam Darnold, the top quarterback on the free agency market, was going to go to the Raiders. Now it seems that they have bypassed that market and instead made a trade. And all I would say, we were surprised by this, and that maybe we didn't see this coming, but perhaps we should have. When Tyler Lockett was cut and released by the Seahawks, a lot of people said, "Oh, is he going to the Raiders? They could use another couple receivers." Pete Carroll was there. There's some familiarity there. Is this an obvious answer? It's like, well, why couldn't the same thing be said for Geno Smith? Obviously, going from Seattle to Las Vegas, there's a little bit of a pipeline forming there. And it also shows that Pete Carroll and Tom Brady and the brain trust in Las Vegas, they don't want to try to build around a rookie and not one that they could get at 6 overall. So instead of trading up from the 6th pick and trying to get one of the top 2 quarterbacks in this draft, they said, we're going to get a guy that we know, that can come in and start from day one and compete. He can facilitate a Brock Bowers. He can throw to Jacoby Myers. They might get another receiver, and Tyler Lockett might still come in to join that offense as a slot. I think he's still got some productive football left to be played. This does leave a wide open hole in Seattle. I talked about Lockett being released. Obviously, they no longer have Geno Smith at quarterback, so is now that the destination for Sam Darnold? We'll have to wait and see. But DK Metcalf is the big headline coming out of Seattle now. Is shortly after, within a couple of hours, it seemed, after Tyler Lockett was informed of his release, the star receiver for that offense, Jackson Smith-Njigba aside, DK has now demanded a trade. And so it's real interesting to see if maybe they can come to a resolution and keep him there, because their new quarterback would obviously fare a lot better with DK in the offense than without him. But there have been a lot of inquiries around the league about DK's availability and his cost and what that would look like. So I don't know if you guys had any thoughts about DK Metcalf and if you think he's going anywhere.
He demanded a trade. Usually you're going to get that, or you're going to have some bad blood. So I wouldn't see any reason why that doesn't happen eventually.
I will also add, they said that the deadline for this to happen is the draft. Essentially, they are open to fielding offers for DK Metcalf up to the draft, but once the draft is come and gone, they're shutting it down. He's just going to have to shut up and play football at that point.
Yeah, and I don't know, that Sam Darnold is kind of interesting. Him going over to the Seahawks, wouldn't, with him having the year that he just had, and wouldn't DK want to stay with the Seahawks if they were bringing in Darnold to be that quarterback? Because I think honestly Darnold's a little bit better quarterback than Geno. No disrespect to Geno Smith, I think I like him, but yeah, it's interesting that he put in right after Geno was gone. He put in for a trade, so I don't know. We'll just see how that all plays out and where it goes. I guess the only other.
We talk about these players and how they're brought in to fulfill certain needs and certain fits and things like that. So obviously the offensive coordinator that's there in Seattle now was the offensive coordinator for the University of Washington. He runs a lot of 3 receiver sets, and he wants a quarterback that can sling it and distribute that ball. And this could be a sign that they just did not think that Geno Smith, for his strengths as a pro quarterback, really fit what they wanted to do. And maybe they wanted somebody with a little bit more arm talent. And I do agree that Sam Darnold does kind of fit that mold a little bit better. So it wouldn't surprise me if he wasn't their target at this point moving forward. But DK, I think I saw quoted that the reason why he requested a trade was because he did not, at this stage in his career, he did not want to go through a rebuild. And a lot of people didn't think that just by cutting Tyler Lockett that Seattle was rebuilding. But then when you see Geno being traded for a 3rd round pick, you're like, wait a minute, are they tearing it down, or are they just retooling and reshaping for a different vision? This next week, especially, I think is going to be very interesting. Obviously, today is Saturday when we're recording this. Monday is the start of legal tampering, where a lot of our deals will start getting announced, and then Wednesday at 4:00, I believe, is when free agency officially opens up, and we'll see some of these deals really get finalized. But I think we'll all be kind of glued to that scenario and figure out what's going on in these pro teams. What else you got, Brian?
I guess the last thing is Bosa. Do y'all have any predictions where he may end up?
San Francisco.
Yep,
You think?
I've heard that. I've heard that as well.
Yeah, I have too.
Huh.
I also
His
heard
I think
Arizona.
yeah,
So
I could see that as well. Arizona needs some edge help. We talked about that in our free agency video as well, with Josh Sweat possibly going there. I think the San Francisco 49ers, they do not shy away from investing in the defensive side of the ball or the defensive line. They are a perennial contender. They've had some bad issues with injuries lately, but his brother plays there, and I think these guys have both come in. It's kind of like J.J. Watt and T.J. Watt, and it's like they want to be around their brothers. It's kind of a dream that they have, like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we made it to the NFL and we got to play together? And I think for 49ers fans, it would be something of a dream too to have both those guys coming off the edge and blitzing quarterbacks. It would just be a nightmare combination. So I think that's the obvious answer, kind of the chalk pick that anybody would give. But that's the overwhelming favorite from what I've seen.
okay.
We have Max Crosby too. I know Brad wanted to touch on that. You can go ahead with that, and I'll just give you my thoughts afterwards.
Yeah, so I've got one other thing that I want to bring up after Max, but
Okay.
3-year deal with the Raiders. They went ahead and locked him up before free agency. He gets the biggest contract to a non-quarterback in NFL league history. So it is a star pass rusher that has been incredibly productive in his time in the league. This is obviously well-deserved. He just seems like all around a good person, unlike the next person we'll talk about. But which I don't even know if you guys have heard what I'm about to bring up, but we'll get your thoughts on Matt Crosby first.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking him up. He's pretty young still, right? 26, 27. I think it's smart to invest in a guy that's going to go disrupt an entire offensive game plan, because those guys don't come along too often, and we've seen it. The guy's name's escaping me now. He played at A&M. He was part of the Broncos defense when they won the Super Bowl. Was it Von Bell?
Von Miller.
Von Miller.
Von Bell was a safety.
Oh, my bad. Von Miller, yeah. He disrupted all sorts of games. If you can get one of those guys, and they do come along every 5 or 6 years, but I think if you have the chance to go ahead and lock one down, especially like I mentioned already, I think Vegas looks like they're building something. I don't know when it's going to come to fruition, but yeah, lock down your game changers and lock them down now.
Well, I mean, I think you draft to find these superstars, and then when you find them, they become a fan favorite.
Mm-hmm.
They become marketable. They're part of your team identity. Why wouldn't you try to keep them around? Why would you start from scratch? I mean, you see Cleveland is going through it right now with Myles Garrett, where he says, hey, look, I've given a lot of time and effort into this team. I've been very productive. And what has it gotten me in the way of team success? Obviously, individual success is motivating for some people, but a lot of these guys just want to win. And Max Crosby helps the Raiders win, especially when you look at the quarterbacks in their division. That would be a huge blow to them to not have him around. So I agree with Brian. Very smart to lock him up, but before he gets out of his own mind and everything in that town and won out like what we've seen in Cleveland.
All right.
But yeah, that was all I really had as far as NFL goes. Obviously, there's been some minor headlines come out, some different teams that were cutting players or re-signing certain deals and things like that, just kind of positioning themselves for free agency about to kick off. Next week's episode is going to be a huge one for that, because we should have the majority of the big names already figured out, and we'll have a lot to talk about with those, and I'm looking forward to it, especially with our predictions. And if any of them happen to hit, we'll have a follow-up on that video too, and just kind of see what our scorecard looked like for our first prediction. I'm already looking forward to doing this year in and year out as we move forward with the podcast, but pretty excited to see free agency start.
And more than likely, we'll do a mock draft video. I could see that happening, whether we just do the first round. I don't know that we would want to take you through a whole mock draft. I know Brad kind of loves that stuff, but I don't know
I'll go
if
7 rounds right now if you want.
no, I'm good, brother. I'm good. All right. So moving on over to NCAA football. Not obviously it's off season. I do know you've got several teams that are gearing up for spring practice. I know Georgia Tech has kind of started theirs. Probably everybody has really started theirs, and we should have some spring games coming up, even though they're very vanilla most of the time. Nobody wants to show anything. They're not they're fun for a fan to watch if you're really, really into football. If you're just kind of into the games and the hype around it, then spring football is probably not the place for you. Um,
Hey, just
hey,
to interject here, a lot of teams have canceled their spring game. Um,
really?
I think I've seen Nebraska, USC, I think an SEC team's in there, and I'm not sure what's going on. I know for, I think Nebraska, at least it was because they got so many in the transfer portal that they can't put together a realistic picture of what their team's going to look like. Here locally, Georgia Southern has canceled their spring game a time or two for the same reason. They just didn't have enough players to get a realistic look. I'm not sure all the teams or what the numbers are, but it is interesting, something that people out there might want to follow and comment back on here. Why do you think that they're canceling a lot of these spring games? I'm not really against it either. I've been to a few. I didn't enjoy myself that much. I socialized more than I watched it, and that's not like me at a football game. But it just gets boring.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say spring games are not football games.
The only other thing that I've got really happening uh, is the Cam Skattebo, obviously our one of our favorite players on the channel, has a, I'm gonna call it a silly lawsuit. Just after reading a few details on it,
Mhm.
um, I I don't know if it has any merit. I don't want to discount the the plaintiff, I guess, because it could have he could have gotten hurt. It could be a much bigger deal than I know of, but on face surface, it's kind of like, okay, he's going to NFL, give me some of that money.
Mhm.
Because I believe it's happened a while back. It's not even something that happened recent, and you're just now wanting to get paid for it. I mean, obviously you're in it for the money. So
I have
uh,
details on that if you didn't and you wanted me to let people
yeah,
know.
go ahead.
So from what I gather, and I didn't read everything, every detail, but it essentially evolves around 2013. A golf cart was carrying players from the practice field back to the field house or whatever facility they were at. Cam jumps on the back of the golf cart, jumps up and down a little bit. I should mention that in 2013, Cam Skattebo was 11 years old, and this is not out of the norm for an 11-year-old to jump on the back of a golf cart. And honestly, jumping up and down, you're just like, oh, I'm testing the shocks, testing the shocks. I don't know how this led to an injury. It obviously did, and yeah, if you're bringing it up now, you see a guy. I feel like there's a guy with dollar signs in his eyes. And I hate to say that if he's truly injured, but even if he is truly injured, I'm sure something I did when I was 11 years old led to the injury of someone else. And people were like, "Hey, kids get hurt. It's not a big deal." And I don't think this is a big deal.
Yeah, I think if you hadn't seen Cam's performance against Texas in the college football playoff, this story would have never seen the light of day.
Yep.
I think everybody sees the draft stock and the buzz around him. Obviously, Cam's name is in the the headlines around college football and the draft and everything like that. There's a lot of buzz around him, and with that comes people out of the woodworks just trying to grab at it in negative ways.
Just like last chance you, huh?
Exactly,
Just trying to capitalize on some money to be made.
definitely. So unfortunate circumstance. It's a distraction in a time that Cam doesn't really need it. He's obviously got a lot going on right now. This is a very important time for him. I hope that he can put the blinders on, listen to the smart people in his life that tell him not to worry with this. Let it handle the way that it's going to, and then just keep his mind focused on football and the draft and the cycle that he's going in. I hope it's something that he enjoys and excels at, and we're all excited to see where he goes. Friend of the podcast, Cam Skattebo. Keep your head straight, my guy, and on to the next.
Yep.
All right. I would say let's move on to NBA. And I don't know if I know you've got some notes on this, Chris. I do want to give a big congratulations to, uh, wow, his name just left, LeBron James. I don't know how I forgot that. With his going over 50,000 points, I guess, because, all the young people think he's the GOAT and it's really Michael Jordan, but we won't go there. But congratulations. That's a big feat and I do recognize that. That's good for him. So, Chris, you want to talk about the NBA for a minute?
Sure, I got some notes on my phone if our 31 loyal fans don't mind. Just want to say, what the hell's going on in the state of Texas in the NBA? Dallas trades away Luka. Anthony Davis gets hurt and is making some progress, which obviously means he's not that close to a return. Then we have nine-time All-Star Kyrie Irving going down with season-ending ACL tear, and now they sit at 32 and 10th in the West. Obviously, we talked about last time the Spurs have lost their coach. They've lost their star player, Wemby, and they sit at 13th in the West. Now, nothing has happened to the Houston Rockets yet. I'd be throwing salt over my shoulder, avoiding cracks in the sidewalk. I wouldn't even pick up a penny that's tail side up at this point. They are actually 5th in the West, and they're in okay shape. But outside of Texas, over in LA, the Lakers are now 8-2 since the Luka trade. I haven't seen a lot of games, but from the highlights I have seen, Luka's starting to fit in nicely there. We talked about when the trade first broke that there might be some weight issues. I don't see anything causing him any problems from the highlights I've seen. His assist abilities are really great right now from the highlights I've seen. He's finding the open man. He's doing the things he was doing. If he lost a little weight, and I'm not saying he has to, don't listen to me, but I think he could be a bit more explosive. You add explosivity, that's the word. If you add a little bit of that, I think he could be even more of a beast and have himself in MVP conversations. And I think he has been in years past, maybe not this year, but you could have a hell of a player there with that vision, shooting, passing, and then have yourself in better shape. That could be great. The Lakers have actually climbed all the way up to second in the West, which is still a good bit behind the Thunder, but that's really impressive. And before I go over the East, I'll get Brad's thoughts here. I know Brad might have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of touch back on some of the same things. A lot of people, when that Luka trade, hit the news headlines and everything like that, even people that weren't big fans of basketball were paying attention to that. A lot of people had comments and thoughts on it. And at the time, I thought it was kind of I don't want to say one-sided trade, but I definitely thought that the Lakers had won that trade by securing Luka. Getting rid of AD obviously stung in a certain kind of way. But I mean, as we get into further and further out from that trade, I think it looks more and more lopsided. Even Mark Cuban hates this trade. He did not like that they traded away Luka, but he hated what they got in return even more. Obviously, Kyrie's injury is unfortunate towards ACL on Monday, a game that they ended up losing by like 30 points. And with that season-ending injury, it basically made it to where AD and Kyrie have only played one game together this year, and it's the only game that they're going to play together. Anthony Davis, like Chris said, they're saying that he's improving, but they don't have a timetable. They don't have a return date set for him. So as Dallas continues to fall, I think somebody's going to correct this. I had both teams playing 15 games since the trade happened on February 1st and February 2nd, kind of that night. And so Dallas has 6 wins and 9 losses and have fallen to 10th in the Western Conference, sitting at 32 and 32. Lakers on the other side are 13-2 in their last 15 games since that trade happened. I know Luka didn't play all 15 of those games, but it's just when you see the run that Los Angeles is on and kind of the way that they're doing, it puts to rest any doubt that any Lakers fan had about getting rid of Anthony Davis, bringing in Luka. When you see Luka and LeBron both putting up 30+ in a game and they're just blowing teams out, I think it's just a small sign of things to come in Los Angeles. If you're a Laker fan, you got to be loving life right now. Like I said, I think they're sitting at 40 wins on the season. I believe the Thunder have 53. I don't think that they're going to catch them, or anything like that. But they're in a really good position. Unfortunate for the state of Texas, but that's just part of the game. It's going to happen like that some years. I'm excited to see how far Los Angeles can go, and as they continue to make that trade look like a very smart and savvy move.
Anything to add, Brian, before I give the East some love here?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Well, over in the East, the Cavaliers have won 13 straight as of the time of this recording. They're already having an amazing season. and it shows no signs of slowing down. Donovan Mitchell and company are tearing it up, and of course they are first in the East at 53-10. Their best regular season ever was back in 08-09 when they went 66-16 when LeBron won his first MVP. In that season, the Cavs went on to lose the Eastern Finals to the Magic 2-4. I'm an Eastern guy, so good luck, Cavs.
Yeah, it's weird to see the Cavs having so much success in this year. You almost tie the LeBron James name to the Cavaliers' success because they're not always that great of a team, but you see them really putting it together this year. They're playing great basketball. Obviously, 13 straight is a really good streak, very respectable in this league, where the last place team can beat the first place team. It's not out of the question to see stuff like that happen. Anybody can get upset. Basketball is one of those sports that sometimes the shots just don't go your way. And for Cleveland right now, they really all are.
Well, that's all we had for our NBA update and our thoughts on that. I don't know if Brian has anything else before we go into wrestling. If you're not into wrestling, this is your cue because we've got a little bit to say about it.
Unless y'all want to bring up college basketball before we get off basketball.
Sure, everyone's having or most teams are into their conference tournaments right now. Some teams have dropped the ball a few times and kind of knocked themselves out of the tournament. Some teams, such as Georgia, have put together a bit of a streak and pretty much secured their spot in the tournament, or the big tournament, the NCAA tournament. I'm not sure what we're allowed to say on here because I know you sometimes can't say the name of the big game in football. So I don't know if I'm allowed to say the name of the big tournament in basketball. But yeah, Georgia, I know, is one team that's basically secured it. Doesn't matter what happens in the SEC tournament at this point. A few others have done the same in their respective conferences. Selection Sunday is March 16th. We'll be all filling out a bracket here. I know these two have never filled out one, and it really doesn't matter because I filled out one, and I think the best I've done is I got maybe all of my Final Four teams right, but that doesn't really matter because I was still somewhere around the 66 percentage. They have zoo animals at the zoo that they have pick these tournament games sometimes, and they do better than a good majority of the people. And you just never know. So we're excited to see how that goes on here, and we'll put up graphics at that time and show you the percentages, show you we're not lying about our picks. And
look, man, I know he's never done it before, but you don't have to call my brother a zoo animal. We're pretty much having to put a gun to his head to get him to fill out this bracket. Don't insult him and make it worse, okay?
Well, as long as he outdoes like an otter at the zoo picking it, then
I was going to say some of those zoo animals are pretty cool. The tigers, the rhinos, yeah.
Brian wouldn't have it any otter way.
But yeah, so look forward to that coming up, and but we'll get into that in a later episode or next episode probably.
Yeah, next week we'll talk a good bit about that. Obviously, we'll probably be recording before Selection Sunday happens, but we should have a pretty good idea of who's going to be in the tournament, and then I imagine it'll probably be its own standalone video, but we'll release some brackets and stuff like that, and we'll figure out how we want to get that out to you guys so you can follow along with us.
Yeah.
And
I think that was really all we had with basketball. What else did you have?
Before we get into wrestling, and this is going to be super, super quick, do want to give baseball some love. Spring training still going on in Arizona and Florida. Not sure if they play anywhere other than those two states, but I'm pretty sure every major league team goes to either Arizona or Florida. So that's still going on. Looking forward to baseball season opening day. I believe there's actually going to be a game in Japan on opening day. So that'll be kind of different. I'm not sure if they've ever done that. Maybe they have. Maybe somebody will correct me or at least let me know if it's ever been played over there or not. SEC play.
We're going to play in that game. because
Do I?
half their teams, I said at this point, I assume the Dodgers will be in that game opening
It's
day
the. I
because
believe
half
it's the.
their teams are from Japan anyway.
I believe it's the Dodgers and Cubs. I may be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure it's the Dodgers and Cubs.
Oh, it's not even going back to the homeland. Is he Japanese? He's Japanese, right?
Gotta be.
Gotta be. Oh boy. Hopefully we don't get anything for that.
Moving forward, here's my question for the week. So I got to, we pride ourselves on being all things sports. And so I was like, are we truly all things sports? So I started looking up weird sports that we could report on. Yeah, it's quite interesting list. I found a list of 30 of them. We're not going to go through all 30 of them. Some of them I found funny. Ostrich racing. Never heard of that. I'm not sure if there's a world champion in that.
The fastest ostrich.
The other one was, we're all three married. So one funny one was wife carrying.
Seen that? Yep.
More power to them. And chasing cheese down a hill is like, why? That could only come out of like either Wisconsin or Europe, one or the other. And if you want to give me some hate, that's fine. So my question to you guys is, have y'all ever played anything that's considered a weird sport, or did a dumb sport that you probably had no business playing, but you did it anyway? And I know me and Brad have a few stories that we could tell you about some dumb stuff that we did a few years ago.
Well, talking about things that are called sports that aren't a sport, I've never been a cheerleader. I've never been a NASCAR driver, but I did win a spelling bee in the 4th grade, and that is on ESPN. So if that counts, then put it on the list.
All competitions.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Some people.
I have never chased cheese down a hill, though. I'll look into signing up for that just for the TikTok views. I know that our audience would love to see me chase a cheddar wheel or a baby bell of some kind. Who knows?
Well, I'm trying to think on that. No, but like, I mean, I have heard of some of these. If you've got the list in front of you and you want to like throw out a few, get our quick feedbacks on it and go right back to you, that could be more fun, because I don't think that I have anything that I've done personally.
When Brian brought this up, I thought he was basically just going to go down the slate of what comes on the Ocho today. I was like, we got the air guitar championships at 1. 2 o'clock, we got the mullet championship. I mean, I've seen some crazy stuff on the Ocho.
I agree with that. I have too. Now, number one was ostrich racing. We mentioned that. It comes out of Africa. Being in the South United States, we don't have a lot of ostriches running around. So I don't know that that'll ever get big here in Georgia.
Reminds me of a Kevin Hart skit that he had, where an ostrich was chasing his vehicle. His body was facing this way, his head was facing this way, and Kevin Hart, I guess, raced an ostrich, and by all accounts, it was a good race.
Yeah. Imagine.
This is actually people racing on like horseback racing, but they're sitting on the water.
That kind of strength, honestly.
Oh yeah, they're big, powerful birds. You don't really want to mess with them. I know we do have something close to where I live, right around the corner. There's a wealthy gentleman who loves collecting strange animals or animals from around the world. He has several zebras and a couple of giraffes, and has some ostriches. He has some crazy stuff. So who knows? It may come to Georgia.
I didn't know Joe got out of jail.
Next time you're going by his house, see if he doesn't have like a couple of lanes, and then you'll know he's actually doing some ostrich racing in his backyard, maybe.
He could be. He's quite eccentric. Toe wrestling is number 2. So
you know what? I can see why someone might have come up with that.
It's the cousin of thumb wrestling.
Sounds a little uncomfortable to do like strangers, so I don't care for that one.
Number 3, we have underwater hockey.
Oh
Um,
boy.
That sounds interesting. I thought you were going to say basket weaving. I guess we've all heard of that one. Underwater hockey sounds too
Terrible.
slow paced.
Yeah.
I think
It kind of
Sounds
looks like, I don't know, water polo, but it's all underwater. I don't.
that's
Little strange.
hockey's a fast paced game, so I'm not sure of the logistics of it. I would have a look at it though. Yeah, that's my gut reaction on that one.
Number 5, we have chess boxing.
Oh, I love what you're saying here. This sounds great. This sounds like an improvement on something.
Knight takes the bishop.
You don't have an explanation of it there, do you?
Not really.
I think
It doesn't really get into these. Like I said, it's just a list that somebody put together. Just they have to be skilled at both chess and boxing. So
That's a small part of the population, I think.
I like this one. I think this is the best one you've hit us with so far. You got to
maybe our fans or people watching could maybe they've been a part of it or have actually seen a chess boxing match in person.
I might go look up one myself.
I'm gonna throw down a challenge for WrestleMania weekend: me versus Chris, chess boxing. First, I have to find out how to play chess,
I haven't played in a long time.
and then I'll learn how to box, and it's on.
Huh.
But I need 50 subscribers before WrestleMania, and I need people in the comments to let us know who they think is going to win. Me and Chris, chess boxing.
So the one that looks like something that I would probably do, this goes back to my dumber days, is shovel racing. And basically you hop on a shovel and it's in the snow and you go down a hill. And I guess you just whoever gets to the bottom
Oh, I got you. Like a big
first. So
snowball. Yeah.
now it might get painful if you wreck. Just for us guys, that might not be too pleasant, but because there's not a lot of protection there.
Necessary technique with that one.
Yeah, I think a size requirement too, because even with a snow shovel, like your ass is gonna have to fit on that shovel.
And I may clip some of this that I'm looking at. I may clip some of these images and put them in our playback for edit when I go to edit. So like I said, I thought it was a fun topic. We're very serious most of the time, and want to give like hardcore stats and make sure that we actually kind of know what we're talking about. I know I'm not all that good at that, but this was just something funny. But yeah, that's all I've got. Like I said, I thought it was just a fun way to end the podcast and let everybody know we're not super serious all the time.
Some would argue not enough of the time, but maybe they don't see that on here.
Yeah, that would be the argument from our wives.
Yeah.
I think I could speak for all three of them that they're still waiting on us to grow up. They think it's got to happen sometime, to which we say not today.
I can't believe you joke about that all the time. So,
all right,
get us canceled if we're cancelable at all.
So, any closing remarks?
No, well, yeah, I guess.
No, I've got none. But if I did,
I changed my mind.
It would be these.
I changed my mind, damn it, guys. Be looking for the 10 more rookies that we think are going to have a huge season. Or rookies this past season, we think are going to have a huge 2025 season. That video is over halfway done and should be coming out pretty soon. And I might be biased, but I think it looks really great. The camera's following him around there. Caught me off guard. New cameras, new features.
You can't hide from the camera anymore, Brian.
We've also got another few unique videos coming out. And I'll go ahead and share them since they're almost done. We're going to have the least impressive champion and the most impressive champion for any sport that we can think of, any sport we think we're competent enough to make an informed decision on. We'll even take some of your feedback on maybe our YouTube polls that we put up on sports that we're not as good at. And you guys tell us who you think the least impressive and most impressive, like World Cup champion is or something. Maybe, and we'll take your word for it and maybe do a lot of our own research. And yeah, we're going to put out some of those videos, spark a lot of arguments. I think you guys will enjoy what we put out there.
Yeah, and I think another one, just to kind of put out a tease that I'm looking forward to, is a series of videos that we're going to put out that we have kind of internally labeled playing favorites, which in a lot of times people tell you is a bad thing that you shouldn't do. But we all watch sports for pretty much the same reason, because it gives us enjoyment. And a lot of that, kind of stem from who you got to play. We'll talk about it more in depth in those videos, of course, but it's kind of like, I can't always claim that somebody that I never saw play the game is my favorite, just because that's not how my mind works. Maybe it's different for other people. So we're going to get into, we're going to get into a multitude of sports and who our favorite players are that have played those sports and things of that nature. We'll get more into the way that those videos are going to be put together and kind of our parameters for determining these as we get closer to that time. But it's something that we are looking forward to putting out and recording for you guys, and just kind of wanted to put that tease out there. That's something that you guys could be on the lookout for. So if you haven't subscribed already and that sounds interesting to you, go ahead and hit that subscribe. So as those videos start rolling out, you'll get notifications for them and watch them and let us know what you think.
Yeah, and what they don't see is on my side, I'm the one that's controlling the camera, so I actually had the camera off of me when it started following me for whatever, but I did get a new camera this week, so hopefully it looks a little bit better. But yeah, it will follow me if I start moving and doing different things. So just wanted to clarify that. But yeah, it's been a good week. This is a little bit of a longer podcast. I know y'all got a short podcast last week and a longer one this week. So consistency is not our strong point, I don't guess. But at least you're getting a video every week. So that is consistent. I do want to thank
you. That's ebbs and flows. I mean, there's going to be some weeks where we have more to talk about than others. Obviously, with free agency about to pop off the way that we expect it to, there's going to be a lot for us to talk about, moving forward. Last week we didn't have as much to talk about, and also navigating some technical difficulties that we had. I mean, you guys are actually lucky that you got a podcast to listen to it also. You get what you get. You don't throw a fit, okay?
Yeah.
I do want to thank everybody for watching. Again, much appreciated for the views that we got on our last video, and all on the support that we've gotten on the podcast and TikTok, the shorts. They've done really, really well. Chris does a lot of that, putting the shorts together and the TikTok videos, and he's done an exceptional job on that. So much thanks to him. Again, thanks for the subs, thanks for the all the views, all the love, the support, the comments. We love interacting with everybody, and as you see, we will talk back to you, whether it be from our personal channel or from the actual White Widows channel. Just know that we're all a part of it. So yeah, that's all I've got this week. Any buys, or we're good? Do we have any shout outs?
Nah, I don't have any.
I kind of sprinkle mine in throughout.
I did
we've picked up another couple of subscribers this past week. We're not always sure who subscribes, as far as it's somebody that we know that maybe didn't do it during the initial launch of the channel and have come on board, or if it's somebody that just happened to stumble across our channel, liked what we were putting out, and decided to support us that way. Whether it's somebody we know or not, though, we appreciate every single one of you. Yeah. We're excited to see that number continue to grow, and we'll see. That chess boxing match isn't going to happen if we don't hit 50 subscribers. Sure. I think you have until April 20th to do that. That's your deadline. So if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. This is your time to do so. Yep. But all joking aside, we do appreciate the support and hope it continues to grow. We're not going anywhere. We plan on being here no matter what changes or week to week. We're always going to continue to try to put out content that we think you guys will enjoy. And we like the feedback too, positive or negative. Yeah. We can't change until we know what you guys want. So Let us know if you have any thoughts. Obviously, pay attention to the polls that are coming out on YouTube. A lot of votes that you can cast to kind of get involved in the discussion and maybe even tailor some future ones. So pay attention to those if you haven't seen it.